One of my neighbors is acting weird. This morning my husband went to take out the trash and when he came back he said some kids were staring into our yard. I thought it was weird but eventually forgot about it until I went outside to go up to my upstairs neighbor's house. This 16 to 18-year-old boy was literally standing on something and looking over the fence. I got really freaked out but just went upstairs and knocked on my neighbor's door. She didn't answer, and when I turned around I saw him just standing there staring at me through the window. I kind of froze and just stared right back, and after about a minute he sat down. Now every time I look out the window he's at the fence just staring into our backyard. It's been hours. I'm not sure if I'm overreacting, but it's just so odd. Weird encounter with neighbor's boyfriend. I, 25M, was leaving my apartment and as I was backing up there was a guy in the car next to me. Car was backed in and I was pulling out so I could see the driver clearly, and he was just staring at me. I looked away and looked back and he didn't break eye contact. I waited for like 20 seconds and just stared at him back. After that I rolled my window down and asked what was wrong. He said, "Huh." I asked, "Why are you staring at me?" He said, "Because you are staring at me." I said, "No, I'm not. You were looking at me first and I've never seen you before." He just started slowly shaking his head and just did not break eye contact. I said, "Are you good?" and he didn't say a word. I started to drive away slowly and he got out of his car and just watched me drive off. This guy is my neighbor's boyfriend and I'm not sure what to do. I have no issue with him but now I feel very uncomfortable and I don't know what to do when I see him again. Am I overreacting or should I be worried? Ideas on why my neighbors live in a van and not their house. We recently moved into a house in a densely populated suburb located in the Midwest. More specifically, the neighborhood is located in an area where 2 miles south can be described as rough, where we're actually located is okay but not great. The homes in the neighborhood are humble homes that were built in the 40s/50s. 2 houses down from our house is a 1-story yellow house that has always had 3 minivans parked in the driveway. The odd thing about the house is that a young man and young woman seem to live in one of the vans. We first noticed this in the summer. We would walk by and see them laying on a mattress in the van with all of the windows and doors open. They'd be sleeping or watching something on a laptop, and a long power cord ran from the van to the house. No matter how hot the day was, they were in the van. I have never once seen them coming from house, just always in the van. The vans are parked right up to the sidewalk in their driveway. Fast forward to now and they're still in that van with the extension cord running from house to van. The state we live in has cold winters. We're talking 20 degrees Fahrenheit. It is worth noting that I have seen lights on inside of the house. I have never seen any sort of construction or maintenance happening in or around the house, nor have I seen anyone else on the property/living in the house. Any ideas as to why they are living in a van when it seems like they have a house right there they could more comfortably live in? Weird encounter with my Islamic neighbors. So me and my girlfriend moved into our new apartment. There's a pretty elite Islamic school right by us, so most of our neighbors are Muslim. We never have an issue dealing with other people's religion and we're really nice neighbors, but the first instance was when my girlfriend tried to say hi to a group of women walking by who gave us mean looks and walked away. Now there's a man that follows us around the place when we go for a walk. He always stares at us with this mean look on his face, but now we've noticed the following. I don't want to step on some toes when it comes to religion, but I'm not gonna have a man follow my girlfriend. I don't think it matters that much, but I'm pretty sure they're all from Afghanistan since those are the flags they fly outside the apartments. He's always fully dressed up in a kaftan even in the 100 degrees weather we have, and I've almost reached my limit when he followed us to the Mexican restaurant down the street. Very strange activity with the neighbors. Hey, good evening. I'm on night shift tonight, so I figured I'd finally type this out. It's been ongoing for a few weeks, but seems to be over. I hope at least, so I'm between places to live right now. My old apartment got condemned, so I, 24F, am splitting time between my brother's house and my boyfriend's house, while I'm finding an apartment. Unfortunately, we're in a hardcore housing crisis down here right now, so it's taking longer than I'd like, so my boyfriend has only been living here for a couple of months. He shares a yard with his neighbors, which is rented out by the same landlord. The neighbors gave me no bad impressions at first. It's a husband, a wife, a daughter, and somebody whose relation to the family was never made clear to me. He's a guy though, mid-40s, so the first thing that kind of got me thinking was the fact that their bedroom activities could be heard loudly. Anytime they were in the bedroom and we were outside, we could clearly hear everything. This wasn't a hug bother though. One night, around midnight, we could hear a chainsaw being used inside of their house, accompanied by screams. My boyfriend had the brilliant idea to go over there, but I convinced him that we just call the police. I don't know what the outcome of that was, but the next day we saw all of them at one point or another. And nobody seemed to have been hurt. The next thing I found to be strange was when the wife had come outside as I was leaving for work. She was wearing nothing but sweatpants. To make it clear, I saw titties. She just carried on doing what she was doing. The next thing, which seemed to be the final straw for my boyfriend, was when he and I were trying to sleep. They randomly started stomping on the floor inside of their house and started chanting. Not sure what they were saying, if anything at all, but he was getting restless. The next day, he went over to the husband and told them that they needed to keep it down. Both he and his wife were confused and played dumb. My boyfriend jumped to the conclusion that they were on drugs, and I won't lie, so did I, but they argued profusely that they didn't do that. The verbal altercation lasted a few minutes before my boyfriend simply told them to stay on their side of the yard and to stay quiet. This lasted for a whole day before the wife had come outside, wearing nothing but a sports bra and sleep shorts, and fell asleep by their fire pit. I'm a nurse by trade, so I went to see if she was okay and found that she wasn't breathing. I called 911. An ambulance came and got her, along with two of the others, who were all unconscious inside of the house. I had remembered after all of this was settled that my boyfriend had said once upon meeting them that the wife had mentioned that all of their windows were unopenable. They had suffered from carbon monoxide poisoning. None of them passed during the ordeal, thankfully. All three survived, but I haven't seen them since and I doubt that they'll be back in the house. I guess what I'm trying to say is, be safe and make sure that your house is up to code before moving in. We are currently in the process of having his house checked, just to be on the safe side. Weird downstairs neighbor. Hello everyone, I, 26F, recently moved into an apartment with my boyfriend, 27M. We instantly fell in love with the place and the price. We got approved and moved in rather quickly. The place is in a college town area. There is a bar nearby, grocery stores, and fast food places. Nothing out of the ordinary nor sketchy. On the day of move-in, our landlord gave us our keys and briefed us on the neighbors. There are only 4 apartments in the complex. Landlord said they are very reserved for the most part. One neighbor is very scared of COVID-19, so they stay inside. Neighbor across from us seems to be very reserved as well. Now, I saved the best for last. Our bottom floor neighbor. Let's call him Cal. As we were walking up towards our place, our landlord said, "Oh, yeah, that's Cal. He is very weird." BF and I looked at each other like, what the fuck does that mean? His windows and doors were wide open. Landlord explained that he did not have AC at the moment. He continues to have all windows and doors open. We ignored it and continued unpacking. We had prior plans to leave town, so we did not spend the first few nights there. Upon arrival, we discovered why he was weird. When we first saw him, we said hello and made some comment about the weather. He seemed confused/disoriented and said, yeah, okay. As the days passed, we would say hi, he would reciprocate at times. It was obvious that he was socially awkward. If I pulled up into our parking lot and he saw me, he would scurry into his room. Thought it was unusual but brushed it off. We thought that was the extent of his weird. Boy, were we fucking wrong. Slamming, shoving, and hitting of his own doors started at night, only at night. The slamming and banging was so loud that it woke us up. When we got closer to our door, we heard him yelling. We finally understood why he was deemed weird. This continued for many nights in a row. We would notice that he just stands in the middle of the parking lot and talks to himself. If he sees me, he goes back inside, etc. Things escalated this past weekend. It was late in the evening, we were chilling, watching TV when we heard a knock. We immediately knew who it was since Cal was chilling outside with the neighbors. BF answered the door and Cal asked if we had seen a young Asian woman walking around. BF said no and he walked away. Last night, I came back home from visiting my family. Immediately after I came home, Cal went upstairs, BF answered the door and asked if we had seen his mom walking around. BF sternly said no and closed the door. To conclude, this morning at 6 a.m., we heard an extremely loud knock. I awoke immediately. I went to the door and did not see anyone, though I saw a flashlight. I got super scared and woke up BF. We looked out and saw there was a police officer looking for Cal. From what we can make out, Cal called the police due to hearing a gunshot and a young woman scream. BF was up since 5 a.m. and stated he did not hear any of that. At this point, we are on edge with this dude. If he comes upstairs again, we are going to tell him to ask the other neighbors. Creepy neighbor on Halloween. This just happened a few hours ago, but I'm not really sure if it's a cause for concern. I just feel very uncomfortable after. I, 20F, live with 2 other women, but our BFs stay over frequently. I was outside with my parents and boyfriend handing out candy to some trick-or-treaters when I see my neighbor come outside. When we moved in, we quickly met the surrounding neighbors, and these 2 live directly across the street. Turns out the guy was an addict and the wife had a medical condition, so she stayed inside a lot. The husband approached me and my family and was generally pleasant to talk to before it turned incredibly uncomfortable. After about 30 minutes of speaking, he would not leave. He began to accuse me and my roommates of throwing out garbage in his can. He then went into detail about how he had it on camera and there was a pair of underwear in the garbage bag. He described the person on these cameras as short and stout. I am 5 feet 10 inches, and you'll see why I'm saying this. He continues to go on about how his wife is mad at him because one of us did it, but he isn't mad and isn't trying to get us in trouble. After about 15 minutes of this, his wife sends him a photo of my Facebook profile and says that this person's name was on the papers in the garbage. At this point my parents went in and my boyfriend and I are alone with this man, and he's saying that I must have done it and kept asking why I put these underwear on top, but my roommates and I have never thrown anything in his trash. I found their Facebooks and blocked them. BC, it creeped me out, and he said his wife tried to call the police about it. My parents just brushed it off, but I still feel uneasy. What do you guys make of this? Neighborly or creepy? I recently moved into a new neighborhood in the city I live in and was walking my dog when a man I've seen a few times started talking to me. He was sitting on the stoop of an apartment building 1 street over. My building and this building share the alleyway in the back, and he was asking about my dog. He asked my name and I gave it, and he told me everything seemed fine, but I'm a small female and limit my conversations with strangers, especially men, as much as possible because this happens more frequently than I'd like. Anyway, I would see him every day from that moment on, in the alley, working. Turns out he is a contractor for that building, and he would consistently hold conversations with me no matter what I was doing. A few times he offered to give me used furniture from evictions, no thank you, and would insist on bringing them into my apartment for me. I live with my boyfriend, thankfully. This guy even tried to pressure me into viewing one of the newly renovated apartments that he's working on, but I obviously said no. For 1, I don't need an apartment, and 2, I'm definitely not going in there alone with him. One day I was approached again. This time I was getting out of my car to go into my house, and he stopped me and said, "I've been watching your apartment to make sure you're safe. Tell your boyfriend I'm not a bad guy and I'm only watching for your safety." I said, "Oh okay, thanks name, bye." He's since followed me a few times driving, but I think he gave up because this was months ago and no sign of him. Just a little creepy. I think my neighbor is stalking me. Neighbor has been stalking me for a month. I have noticed my neighbor doing some pretty creepy shit. The initial encounter was about a month ago while I was walking my dog up a street that's about a quarter mile from my house. The man was talking with a group of people, 3, and as I walked by he ran up to pet my dog. He was asking me questions about my dog, such as name and gender. He then began to ask me questions about where I lived, but more so asking for confirmation as if he somehow knew already. "X, you live at XYZ, right?" This made me uncomfortable, so I went to leave, and then he attempted to give me a hug and kiss me on the cheek. Previous to this, I had never met this person. After walking away, I thought the whole situation was weird, but would proceed with caution in the future. Since then, there's been increase in encounters with this neighbor. Such as, walking up the street with my significant other, then the neighbor seemed to be waiting for us as we were walking by. Without saying anything, he began calling our dog and trying to pet him. He continued this even as we were walking away. 2 days after the initial encounter, drove by the house 10 times within a short time period. This happened at night while my boyfriend and I were walking the dog. When he saw us, he slowed down, turned on his hazards, flashed his headlights, honked, and shouted "Hey" out the window with his music blasting. The song he was blasting happened to be "Window Shopper" by 50 Cent. The circling began once we got in the house. 2 weeks ago, he was in his vehicle, waiting at the edge of the property. I noticed him when I walked outside with my dog, and then he quickly drove off. For 5 days after the circling, lurking at a stop sign in front of my home. As I was returning home from walking the dog, I noticed the neighbor standing near the stop sign looking toward my home. He ran off when he noticed that I had seen him. 4 days ago, he was waiting in his vehicle, on the edge of the property where he had clear view of the basement door. He was noticed by some guests as they left through the door, and he proceeded to drive off. Tonight, all the encounters happened to coincide with when we walk the dog, 4 times a day. I've noticed that he tends to be outside more around the times I would normally walk the dog. In that situation, I go back inside and wait 45 minutes to walk, or go to the dog park for an hour instead. Unfortunately, we weren't able to record these encounters, but we plan to start recording our walks from start to end. Along with when we go outside just in case he's there, the frequency has made me feel targeted as well as unsafe while walking my dog. I have taken a photo of the license plate, but I don't have much physical evidence. I'd like to call the police, but without evidence I doubt they can do anything. My creepy neighbor. This happened in 2019. I no longer have contact with this person. When my husband and I lived in our first apartment together, I did not have a job. We had just moved to a new city and I had trouble finding anything. Naturally, I was at home because of this. Every day at the same time, would walk my dog Remy, 7F. We would always walk the same route, in front of the leasing office across the street, by the basketball courts, and by the tennis courts before walking the rest of the property of the apartment complex. The first encounter I had with this guy gave me tons of red flags, and I did report him to the leasing office because of his behavior, as I was walking Remy back home. This man, who looks like he was in his 40s, glasses, gray hair, was walking from the basketball courts to the sidewalk. I stopped with Remy, because she was going to try and jump on him if she got close enough. He noticed us and asked, "Is she aggressive?" I told him no. She will just jump, and I know some people don't like dogs or dogs jumping on them. He looked me up and down, staring at my chest for a second, then asked if he could pet her. I said sure, because Remy's tail was going 1,000,000 miles an hour and she was whining to meet a new person. He started to talk to me while he was petting Remy. "I'm Joe, fake name. I just moved in across the street. What is your dog's name?" I was nice to him, enough though I had a weird feeling while talking to him. "This is Remy. I'm Megan, fake name. I live next to the groundskeeper with my fiancé. You'll like it here. The staff are awesome." The entire time I was talking, he was petting Remy and staring at my chest. Joe thanked me for letting him pet me dog, then turned around to leave. I was weirded out, but brushed it off and told myself it was probably nothing. I walked Remy the rest of the way home, but I noticed that Joe had went into the entrance of his apartment building, but was watching me walk home through the glass. I hightailed it the rest of the walk to my apartment. It freaked me out enough I called the leasing office and told them that Joe has watched me walk home after meeting me, and I was generally uncomfortable with him. I also had them come fix the blinds in our dining room because I didn't want anyone looking inside our apartment. After I loaded myself into the car and drove to my MIL's house. I stayed there until my now husband got home. Anytime I walked Remy, and eventually Peach, my other dog, Joe always was somehow outside when I was. He always tried to come talk to me or pet the dogs. Luckily, when I would walk Peach, she would growl at him. She was and still is very protective of me. If I ever walked the dogs with my husband, he would never come talk to me. It was only if I was alone with Remy or if I was alone. He also would start walking by the front of our apartment when my husband wasn't home. He would try to look through the sliding door to get a glimpse of me. My husband and I decided to move into a bigger apartment because we needed more space for the dogs and ourselves. The day I got the keys for our new apartment just down the street, I had another experience with Joe that made me call the cops. I was walking both of the dogs around the block so I could finish up some last-minute packing. I saw Joe pull into the complex in his car. I stopped to let him go past me, but he waved me to cross the road. When I did cross, he pulled around really fast with his window already rolled down. "Hey Megan. I was wondering, are you happy with your husband? If not, I can help you out." He looked me up and down and gave me a wink. I acted like I didn't hear him since I had headphones in. I immediately went inside and locked the door behind me. I called the leasing office and told them what happened. I also let them know I was going to call the cops and at least make a report because his behavior was freaking me out. And I wanted to at least have it documented. I called the non-emergent line and an officer came out. I told him what happened that day and some of the creepy behavior Joe had before. The cop asked me, "Do you want me to give him a warning to not talk to you?" I said yes. I thanked the officer for his time after he took my name and phone number down, and he went to the leasing office to talk to the staff about the situation. About an hour after the cop left, he gave me a call. He told me he has talked with the property manager of my apartment and he also ran Joe's license plate number. He told me his name, and told me that the leasing office said he has other complaints from other tenants on file. He also mentioned he didn't get the chance to talk to him because Joe was leaving as the cop arrived at the leasing office. I thanked him again for his time and finished packing. I decided to go to the leasing office to talk to the property manager just to clear anything up just in case. When I got there, the manager told me that Joe had multiple reports just like the officer told me. She also told me she was going to have our on-site officer stop and talk to him and encourage him to not talk to me or other female residents. I thanked her and went home to start moving little things until my husband got home. I went almost 6 months without another incident with Joe. We moved to the 3rd floor and he didn't have any idea which apartment was us, so he wouldn't bother us. I also made it a point to have the dogs on a certain schedule so I would never run into him if we were out. The last time Joe tried to talk to me, I turned around and walked away. I didn't let him get a word in. I did notice him harassing my neighbor outside while she was grilling one day. I told the leasing office about it just in case. A couple months later he moved out because they wouldn't let him resign his lease. That's the last I saw of Joe. I carried a stun gun with me when I walked the dogs or by myself because of him. I was fully prepared to shock his ass a couple times if he ever got too close after I called the cops on him.